you so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm very excited to be here to see so many amazing, accomplished women. I was asked to talk about how we can accelerate the next generation of technology entrepreneurs and innovators. And as I was thinking about what am I going to say, I've been working recently quite a lot with the Department of Basic Education, but working with Africa Teen Geeks as well has made me to do a lot of research about the future of our children really when it comes to technology, either access to technology education or role models. So I started looking at a lot of the stats. So the first few part of my talk is just going to be giving you the context that we're working on. I mean, now with the president talking about the fourth industrial revolution, everybody is really excited about that. But I call myself an optimist. But I also understand that there's still a lot of challenges that sometimes we can get excited about the hype, and at the end of the day, it may not give us the results that we think is going to happen. So I'm going to start just to talk to you about what is happening in our education system right now. We currently measure our success in basic education in quantity rather than quality. So every time you'll hear, this year we had 89% pass rates in math, or in our matriculants, but what they don't tell us is how many of them have actually passed for them to be able to do anything about that matric certificates. Only 13% of those who start school in grade 1 will be able to apply for university entrance. There are currently 600 pupils who drop out between grade 10 and 12. And by grade 3, a lot of children from the poorest 60% of our school are already 3 years worth of learning behind learners in more affluent circumstances. The state of maths and science teaching in South Africa leaves very little actually to be desired. And actually a report by the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation in 2018 showed that many primary school teachers fail to pass basic maths and English tests in the grades that they were doing. So, you have a primary maths and English teacher failing a test for the grades that they're teaching. And according to the Department of Evaluation, they said that only 10% passed English and 5% pass maths. And for the past 5 years, learners who pass maths and science with 50% or higher is hovering between 21% and 29%, respectively. While there's a lot of enthusiasm, as I said, about the fourth industrial revolution, the truth is we will be leaving the majority of our citizens behind, especially our children from poor communities. Student science achievement, according to research that was done by Harvard, declined dramatically between primary and high school. By the time students graduate from high school, only 30% of them have developed the foundation they need to apply scientific concepts to the world around them. And the modern world does not reward us for what we know, but how we apply the knowledge that we have learned. Technology has resulted in the elimination of jobs in some sectors and the creation of jobs in others. This means that the skills necessary for employment have also changed, with many jobs requiring training in science, technology, and math. And yet, only 1 in 4 schools, one in 4 schools in South Africa doesn't teach maths from grade 10 to 12. And that is because the majority of those schools are in townships and rural areas, and according to DBE, that's because we have a shortage of math and science teachers. And yet we are preparing for the fourth industrial revolution, and that requires us to have the math and science skills for the kids to be able to apply or to be prepared for the 65% of the jobs that don't exist yet. So improving STEM education for traditionally disadvantaged groups is now widely viewed as a critical step for increasing economic opportunities for young people. In 2017, the MIT released a research called The Lost Einsteins. I hope some of you can Google it, please, if you can, and read that report. While it's based in about the US, it's very much relevant to us here. It's a reference to people who could have had highly impactful innovations if they had been able to pursue the opportunities they deserved. The researchers worked with the Treasury Department in the US to link the tax records with patent records. Doing so allowed them to study the background of patent holders, and the study focused on the most highly cited and significant patents. The researchers then linked those records to grade 3 math scores for the patent holders. Not surprisingly, children who excelled in math were far more likely to become inventors. But being a math standout wasn't enough. Only the top student who came from high-income families had a decent chance of becoming an inventor. Children who grow up exposed to a particular type of invention or inventor are far more likely to follow that path. Growing up around innovators makes one far more likely to become an innovator themselves. Similarly, girls who grow up in areas with a lot of female innovators are more likely to become inventors themselves. The study also found that the difference in innovation rates doesn't seem to be because of innate ability to innovate. So the kids are both, whether they are from a poor background or affluent background, they've got the same level of intelligence and creativity. Creativity is broadly distributed, but opportunity, unfortunately, is not. And recreating these social networks and role models everywhere in the country will be difficult, but it is surely worth trying given the stakes. So there's a lot of opportunities for NGO, universities, and companies to cultivate the lost Einsteins and help turn them into potential innovators. That's why organizations like ourselves, Africa Teen Geeks, but also I see Zandile here from Girl Code are so important, because if you go to the townships, a lot of the kids, if you ask a 7-year-old, what do you want to become when you're older? They're going to tell you, I want to probably become DJ Fresh or Bonang. I've got nothing against them. I think they're beautiful, they're amazing, they're very successful. But that's why we're excited about them, because there's only one DJ Fresh and there's only one Bonang. So the chances of them achieving success at that level is very low, or even becoming as a soccer star. And we cannot expect these kids to dream of something they haven't seen. And many times, once we become successful, a lot of us, we move to the suburbs. And when we go to Soweto, we go to Vilakazi Street. And a lot of the kids, they don't get to see us. They don't get to see that you can still have a successful life, even if you don't, you are not on television. So it's really important. I'm hoping, especially with our universities, now we've got a university in every province. And there you've got researchers that come up with a lot of exciting innovations. And I learned that there's a lot of patents that actually come from the universities that they end up selling outside, because apparently our companies don't invest a lot in the innovations that we have. But to have those innovators and going to the township, when the kids, they can see somebody who look like them, then they will also be inspired to become an innovator themselves. We focus on high school, mostly grades 10 to 12, while research has already shown that it's already too late, specifically for girls. Microsoft did a study in 2017 that was based in Europe, and they found that girls gain interested in STEM subjects at age 11 and then lose it again at age 15. So by the time they get to grade 10, And that is why when you see how many of them choose maths and science, we're sitting on the 20%. That's because we've already lost those girls. And a lot of efforts in terms of improving math and science starts from grade 10 when it's already too late. And also the foundation, we know that if they don't get the foundation in grade 3, we know by grade 3 they're already behind, especially kids from our township are already behind from kids from affluent sectors. We need to do more in introducing and exposing and supporting those kids as early as possible. And also, only 3% of women entrepreneurs actually start businesses in ICT, compared to 11% for men. And the difference will not disappear overnight, but we can start planting the seeds today in our girls as early as possible. Early exposure is very important. And especially when we know that we lose these lost Einsteins when they're in the foundation phase from grade 3. So we need to go there and see how we can support them and make sure that these kids should not continue live a life of disadvantage purely because of their address. Youth unemployment in South Africa is unacceptably high. And it will not be resolved by government or big business. In fact, we know that a lot of the big companies are retrenching. The minister also talked about, of public works, talked about how they were asking employees to take voluntary retrenchments. So that the unemployment rate is not going to decrease. It's not going to come from big business. So, and this is not a unique South African problem. In fact, nearly 40% of young people globally are unemployed or ranked amongst the working poor. This means we need to focus on alternative pathways for young people to join the workforce. And that can only be done by teaching innovation and entrepreneurship as early as possible, but also making sure that as our secondary school becomes a pathway for young people to go directly to either entrepreneurship or employment. Research suggests that accelerating entrepreneurship is as much about community transformation as it is about helping individual entrepreneurs. It's about changing the way we teach and what we teach. We need to teach the relevant skills such as critical thinking, problem solving, and creativity. Actually, every speech that we probably heard from government, they were talking about that. We need to teach critical skills, creativity, and STEM subject. I mean, a week ago, I was here actually at the IDEA conference when President Ramaphosa talked about the importance of STEM to make sure that we prepare our young people for the fourth industrial revolution. But how are we going to achieve this when our teachers don't have the skills themselves? Obviously, I know this is not an easy problem to solve, but it means we need to rethink the role of teachers in the classroom. And rather than continuing the path where the learner depends on the teacher, we need to create a culture of self-learning, especially problem solving as early as possible, by introducing adapted learning powered by AI in our education system, and encourage the kids to start to be able to learn by themselves. And this is actually possible. I've heard a lot of discussion with people, even with some of the teachers who say to me, no, you can't do that. Because I think what I've seen with our education system is developed with the assumption that our children can't. And as long as we continue to do that, we're actually even discouraging those that have the great potential. But teaching kids to learn to be independent and to learn by themselves is possible. I mean, I have 3 kids. Both my youngest kids actually are very technical. I mean, my 11-year-old was invited to speak to Microsoft at Microsoft Business Application Conference, where she talked about virtual reality. She knew more about it. I mean, a lot of it she's learned by themselves, because people who know me, they know I am horrible. I'm not a technical person myself. I can't even change the TV once it's switched off. I have to ask my kids. I'm like, okay, now I think I'm on radio, so how do I get to the news? So they know that they can't ask me for help, and they have to learn to actually find this information themselves. And even as she is 11 years old, we applied for her to actually study computer science because she's been doing the courses from Harvard, MIT, all of them on EDX and Coursera. Now she will be starting a BSc at age 12 online from the University of London. So it's possible. So when I say to people, this we can do because I'm showing that, you know, I understand not all three of my kids are brilliant. You know, like I wouldn't say they're not brilliant, but they're not all technically inclined. But I focus on, you know, when I focus on what they're good at. My son is good in art and, you know, he wants to be a filmmaker. So we focus on what he's good at. So I know that if I have to keep forcing him to say, you must do better in math, he's going to end up losing his self-esteem because he's going to think he's not good enough. But if I focus on what I see he's good at, he's awesome, he can take pictures, he can, you know, edit them. So I focus on encouraging him to be successful on what I see. That's where his future is. Because we're not saying all our children should become, you know, software engineers or go into STEM. We also need social workers, we need teachers, but we need teachers that understand technology, can use technology, but can also be able to teach it. And you're not going to do that if we don't teach them at least the basic foundation of what they need to learn. In order for us to achieve this, we need to have, I think one of the problems is that when you look at some of the people that, I'm not criticizing government, I'm part of the FIR commission myself, but we need to have innovators within TV and have people who are technical that can be able to reimagine learning to make sure that every young South African finishes high school prepared and inspired to create and live a good life full of opportunity, choices, connection, and meaning. And to achieve this aspiration, students need to have a strong academic foundation and other important mindset and habits and skills, and most importantly, role models that look like them, that can inspire them to be able to also think bigger, because we've heard this saying that you cannot be what you haven't seen. Actually, I believe you can be, but it's harder. And it doesn't have to be. Because a lot of kids from affluent areas, it's not because they are smarter than the kids, just because they've got a lot of opportunities and access that makes it easy for them. And always trying that we need to make sure, when we talk about the equality of opportunity, we need to also make sure that access is also something that we strive upon and make sure that every child should be able to be successful and not become one of the lost Einstein purely because they were born in a wrong area. Thank you.